You're listening to the Mid-Career GPS Podcast, episode 126.
Okay, I need a job change. Let's start working my resume. I'm always going to say, let's hold the phone for a second, because we need to figure out what that target is. And to get to that target, I think we need to uncover your career sweet spot. And what I mean by that is the overlap between your passions, your skills, and the skills that you want to use, not just all the ones that you have, but the skills that you want to use, and your value add.
Finding your career sweet spot isn't found by updating your resume, perfecting your networking speech, or being more prepared for your interview. To identify where you get to do your best work, you have to figure that out. This isn't about putting a Band-Aid on a problem in your career. This is about doing the hard work so you align with your work, your story, and the value you bring to an organization. Career paths are messy. It's okay to not have everything figured out at this moment. That's why you're here, and it's why our careers evolve and progress, and at times pivot and detour. This episode is going to help you increase your perspective, insight, and detail in telling your career story so you can find your career sweet spot. Today, you will meet Becca Carnahan. Becca is a career coach, author, and mom of two. As a career coach and CEO of Next Chapter Careers, Becca specializes in helping mid-career parents land fulfilling jobs they love without giving up the flexibility they need. Before launching her coaching business, Becca trained as a career coach at Harvard Business School and has 14 years of experience in the career and professional development field. She's also previously worked for the Boston Celtics and has published 2 best-selling children's books and a career development book, When Mommy Grows Up. In this episode, you will learn the benefits of a bridge role in your career and how that bridge role can help you get clear about what you want to do. Plus, Becca and I talk about how to address a gap on your resume and help you uncover your career sweet spot. This is the Mid-Career GPS Podcast, and I'm your host, John Nerrell. I help mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have using my proven 4-step formula. It's time to start building your mid-career GPS. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Do you feel like your career needs a boost? Are you struggling with how to get started in finding that next position? Have you been meaning to update your resume or LinkedIn profile, but aren't sure where to start? I've got something to help you. Visit johnnerrell.com/free to download your copy of the 55-minute Career Transition Jumpstart. It's my free guide to help you get unstuck and find the job you love. My guide will help you improve your messaging, storytelling, and overall marketability. Check the show notes or visit johnnerrell.com/free and download your free copy and let me help you find the job you love or love the job you have. I'm excited to bring you my conversation with today's guest. Becca Carnahan has an exciting career path and she's great at telling her story. Her enthusiasm and how much she loves what she does is evident. She's super knowledgeable about helping mid-career parents create their next professional chapter without giving up the flexibility they need. And there is power in having a bridge job that ultimately gets you to finding your career sweet spot. Think of it as doing great work while being uber curious about whatever is next. We talk about everything from her work with the Boston Celtics after college to her graduate degree at Harvard and working there, and why today she enjoys working with mid-career parents. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Becca Carnahan.
I am a fellow mid-career, and I'm a career coach. So I am a career coach, an author, a mom of 2 little kids, and I specialize in helping parents who are seeking more fulfillment in their work without giving up the flexibility that they need. I truly believe that those two things can go hand in hand. And I find that the mid-career folks that I work with, that's what they're seeking out, and that's what I try to help them find.
I am excited to dig into that with you because that is something that certainly for a lot of my listeners, they are at that point in time in their life, especially as they're raising their own family. And some are also having to deal with taking care of their parents as they start to
Mhm.
age and everything. As you and I have talked in the pre show, mid career is certainly an interesting dynamic for sure. We're going to get there. But first, I want the listeners to get to know a little bit more about you. So, what'd you want to be growing up?
Yeah, I love this question, and I love it so much because I find that the some of the early things that maybe we wanted to be when we grow up, even if you're not doing that exact thing, sometimes there's some interesting through lines between the things that you wanted to be when you were six and what you're doing now. So oh gosh, I wanted to be an artist when I was a kid. I wanted to be a professional basketball player. I wanted to own a novelty keychain shop. Yep, that's a thing that I wanted. I wanted to work in sports. I wanted to be in sports marketing. I had these are all different variations throughout. And today I'm doing essentially none of those things. But I think there's some definitely some callbacks into the things that I wanted to be then and what I'm doing now.
Where'd you go to school?
Yeah, I went to Boston College for undergrad and I went to Harvard Graduate School of Education for my grad school.
And what was your degrees in?
Yes, I did my undergrad was in marketing and communications, and my master's degree was in higher education.
Okay. So we go from novelty keychain store entrepreneur
Oh, yeah.
to doing your graduate work at Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
And in learning a little bit more about you, one of your first early jobs actually connected something from your early desires as a kid. It was your love for basketball, and you went to go
Mm-hmm.
work for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, yes. So that was one of the more consistent things that I wanted to be. And I was never the best athlete. I mean, I could handle a ball playing basketball, but where I saw myself going in high school and when I decided to major in marketing was that, okay, cool. Could I combine my experience, or my experience rather, just my creativity with my love for sports? So sports marketing became the target for me. And when I was at Boston College, I volunteered with the athletic department, and then that led to my first job out of school at the Boston Celtics, where I was working in season ticket sales.
So at that point in your early career, is that just the dream job for you?
You know, I really thought it was.
Mhm.
And I thought that that first job, I'm like, oh my gosh, I made it. I'm working in the NBA right after college. And as I went through that job, there was pieces of it that I loved. It was so fun to be with this group of people. We were talking about sports all the time, got to go to all the games. There was other pieces of it that I realized maybe weren't the exact right fit for me. When I was thinking long term, like, do I want to be working until 10, 11 o'clock at night, 3 nights a week, going to the games? Maybe not long term. Was sales the place that I wanted to be my entire career? Maybe not. There were some really great lessons I learned from sales. I think everyone should do sales training in some way because there's
Agreed.
so much interesting stuff you can get from sales training. Um, so it was an interesting dynamic. I think I started to think about what was next, but really it was forced upon me because when I was in that role, we all signed. There was 5 or 6 of us who started at the same time, and we signed a 9-month contract. That's what they did for anyone coming out of school who was doing it in the sales position. And most everyone in the past, because the Celtics had not been a good team for many years, and they needed salespeople to sell those tickets. A lot of people transitioned into more formal full-time roles after that. So that was where I thought I was headed. But this was the year that the Celtics traded for Kevin Garnett and Ray
Mm.
Allen, and Paul Pierce was there. And it was the year they won the championship. So by February, we had sold out of tickets. We were twiddling our thumbs. a little bit. So it was no surprise that our contract ended when it did because there was nothing left to sell. They really shouldn't have us on the payroll anymore. So that was a big change for me to think about, okay, I got my dream job working at the Boston Celtics. Was it actually the dream or not? And now where do I go from here?
It's an interesting point in our career journey. And we've talked about this before, where we start assessing fit very differently.
Mm-hmm.
We get out of college, we want that job. We're like, okay, this is good. Is this where I'm going to end up landing? And then life and work happen,
Mm-hmm.
and we start reevaluating some of that fit.
Yes.
So you have a good time with the Celtics,
Uh-huh.
and then you decide to pursue a graduate degree.
Mm-hmm.
What was that decision like for you to be like, okay, it's time for me to go get that graduate degree and I'm going to go to Harvard?
Yeah. So there was a bit of a bridge in between those. And I talk about this a lot with coaching clients too, is what is that bridge role for you that can help you get from point A to point B? And for me, it was a role that was somewhat still sales related, working in higher education. And honestly, at that point, I thought maybe I would work in higher education in athletics still. That was still a thought for me. But very quickly after I started working at Harvard University, I fell in love with the higher education environment, thinking about this connection between career and professional development and what you were learning in school and how you can bring that forward into the rest of your life. It tapped into the inner camp counselor in me that I had got every summer growing up. So that's when I actually started to think about getting my a master's degree in higher education after I started working at the university for a little bit and realizing that maybe it's not sports, maybe it's really higher education and this community that I want to be a part of creating.
Tell us a little bit more about why, or how rather, you started gravitating toward that community and feeling like that was the path where you were going to do your best work at that point.
Yeah. Um, I think a lot of it was starting to think about what did I love growing up? And I loved the sports, but it wasn't all sports all the time. And thinking back onto some of my earliest jobs, a neighborhood friend and I created our own summer camp when we were preteens for little kids. I worked at a summer camp and I realized that some of my peak experiences were around building community and educating in some way, helping people to learn and grow. And when I realized and then thought back on that, there's something clicked for me around this is the right space. And when I started to dabble in classes, I didn't dive right into the degree right away. I took a couple non-degree classes. One was specifically related to career services as a sector of higher education. It started to click in even more that yes, this is actually where I want to be going next. And like I tell folks in coaching, it didn't have to be a forever decision, right? It was the right next step for me to tap into a passion and interest area of mine that I wanted to explore next. And there was a career path attached to it, but it didn't have to be forever. It was the right move for that time.
We put so much pressure on ourselves to
Uh-huh.
feel like we have the decision and then that's it. I
Yeah.
love what you shared there about this is the decision for right now.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to be the forever position. It's one of the joys about a bridge job. It just gets us to a space where we can figure things out a little bit more. How much do you think, especially in light of what's happened in the last couple of years, that people have consciously focused on a bridge job or even a bridge in terms of taking time off to figure out what's next for them?
Yeah. I'm not sure that we talk about bridge roles as often as we should. People
Agreed.
talk about the dream job. They talk about going out and wanting to make a big change. And if they're not automatically making that big change, they feel like maybe they failed in some way. So I think the more that we can actually normalize that conversation of let's break this down. Let's reverse engineer where that next goal, that big goal looks like. What are the pathways to get there? What could you learn from an experience that gets you one step closer? Sometimes I refer to it as pulling levers too. I'm kind of using a lot of visuals right here with bridges and levers. But if we were to think about the different things that you can change as part of your career as related to perhaps location, industry, function, your work style, whether that's working remote or hybrid or in the office. What are some of the levers that you can pull? If you can't pull all of them at once, could you perhaps stay in the same function but work in a different industry? Could you stay in the same industry but job craft your role to bring in some more of the skills that you want to use? I think if we can talk about that even more, people are going to feel like less of a failure. And they're going to feel like, no, I'm making progress towards the goal that I've set for myself, and I'm learning about whether this is the right path for me. Because we're all learning, we're all growing every second of every day.
To your point, you as a coach, based on your experiences and the work you do with your clients today, you have a very specific first or foundational step that you believe your clients have to get to before you even have those kind of conversations. Tell us what that is.
Absolutely. I think this is super foundational. And if people come to me saying that, okay, I need a job change, let's start working my resume, I'm always going to say, let's hold the phone for a second, because we need to figure out what that target is. And to get to that target, I think we need to uncover your career sweet spot. And what I mean by that is the overlap between your passions, your skills, and the skills that you want to use, not just all the ones that you have, but the skills that you want to use, and your value add. What kind of problems can you help solve for an organization or a company? So what do these potential targets look like? And then from there, how do we craft your career criteria about what you actually want and need from this next stage of your career? We need that data before we ever start exploring options, because you could explore options all day long. But when you have you have more of that career clarity with your career sweet spot, your career criteria, that data combined, super powerful. And it's going to make your job search and your career progression that much easier.
I 100% completely agree with you. And I've had similar conversations with clients where you just simply say, we need to pause here for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And a pause might be a few sessions, a few weeks to start having those kinds of conversations to really dig into, as you said, what is their sweet spot? What is it that they want? I like the analogy of thinking of a target on the wall. We're not going to throw spaghetti at it and see what sticks.
Right.
Which a lot of people do when we see on LinkedIn, when they say things like, I need help with my interview. I get nervous during interviews. Okay, that's a subset of a larger issue that's going on. And if we're going to engage, we have to really kind of figure out what is that focus point, that intentionality that you want to do.
100%.
Yes. So let's talk about the mid-career professional for a minute, right? It's kind of timely and topical given the nature of this podcast, right? Talk to us a little bit about the kinds of criteria, background, specifics, like the avatar, if you will, for the kind of people you work with, and specifically, what's their biggest pain point?
Yeah. So the people that I work with are generally mid-career parents. Not exclusively, but I'd say most people that I work with are parents. And the reason that I specialize in working with parents stems from my experience as a fellow parent and going through that transition myself of realizing that having kids was a big turning point for me in my career. And I thought about how had my needs shifted, and what about having children may have changed what I thought about what was next. I wanted to tap more into some of the passion areas or creativity that I had been stifling a little bit for the sake of climbing the quote unquote corporate ladder. Seeing the view of my kids' eyes, kind of exploring the world, is like, oh, have I explored the world as much as I have, or have I stopped doing that? And so that was really inspirational for me. And I find that that's a very similar theme that I hear from the mid-career parents that I work with. They have been working in a particular industry or field for 10, 15 years or so. They generally have young kids, and they've kind of gotten through the baby haze of being like, okay, everything's new. And then the kids are starting to get a little bit older, a little bit more independent. Okay, what do we need as a family right now? What do I need as a professional, as a parent? And I really look to help them get clear on what that is, and then create a strategic action plan, an efficient strategic action plan, because they don't have a lot of time. That's another key indicator there too, is
Yes.
that they don't have a lot of time. So let's really figure out a way to make this work for your life and to make it be exciting too, not something that like a pain in the neck that you're trying to do. Let's make this be exciting. This is something for you that you're investing in your career, and as well as investing in your family.
Do you find, especially working with mid-career parents, that they lean more toward navigating the internal promotion, or are they
Mhm.
leveraging their talents and going elsewhere?
Yeah, certainly a mix. I think for a lot of people, they think that the solution has to be external.
Mhm.
Doesn't always have to be,
No.
though. And that's always an interesting conversation once we do the career sweet spots, exercises, and the career criteria. All right, let's just take a second and map this against what you're currently doing. Are there ways that you can job craft your current role or seek out a different role within your organization if your organization is actually checking the boxes in a lot of ways? Uh, that's great. That's good news. Then maybe it makes sense to stay within that organization or within that industry, but in a different type of role. Maybe not. Sometimes for people, it's like, no, we need to make a full on change. We need to definitely change the industry. There's so much here that's not matching up. That's completely fine too. But I think you won't know unless you do some of that internal work of figuring out what the target is. Then once you have the target, then you can think about whether it's internal or external.
I don't have the specific data point in regards to what percentage of working moms during the pandemic
Mhm.
left their jobs to stay home and take care of their kids while schools were doing virtual learning and daycare centers were shut down. Do you happen to know the? I'm putting you on the spot here. Do
Yeah,
you
yeah, I
happen
can
to know
picture
the
the
stat?
chart.
Yeah,
I can picture
I
the
think we're
chart in
looking
my
at the
head.
same piece of data. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I wish I had that exact number. I don't want to just throw out a number if it's not correct.
right.
But I can picture the chart in my mind, and it certainly was significant, right? Like there was a very large number, particularly women, who left the paid workforce. I will not say left the workforce; they left the paid workforce
Correct.
to take on that role of a full-time caregiver and educator at home. And how the numbers are playing out now is that even I wouldn't say we're out of the pandemic at this point. We're certainly still dealing with COVID-19, but as schools have reopened and there has been more childcare options that have reopened, there's still a gap between men who are out of the paid workforce and where they are now. I think that percentage was like plus 3% of as to where they were in 2020. And the last chart I looked at, women were still like -3 or -2% as to where they were in 2020. And it's a big deal. I mean, I work with men and women in my coaching practice, but I'd say I do tend to see more women who are looking to re-enter the paid workforce or have dealt with a big career, oof, like I don't even know what to call it. Just
Mhm.
something that happened during the pandemic that has really changed the trajectory of their career or made them think about what they want and need next.
What advice then would you give to someone who has temporarily left the paid workforce
Mm-hmm.
and is now ready to rejoin the paid workforce,
Mm-hmm.
what tips do you have for them to help them strategically market themselves in the workplace?
Yeah. The number one thing I say, because people will come to me with this question a lot and they'll say, what do I do about this gap on my resume?
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, you don't have a gap on your resume. And they'll say, what are you talking about? And what I tell them is that during that time that you were out of the paid workforce, you were working in different capacities. How does that relate, perhaps, in what you want to do next? So many people will say, like, oh, well, yeah, well, I was out of the paid workforce in terms of my traditional full-time employment, but I kept on this project that I was doing, right? Or another company asked me to do some consulting work, so I did a little bit of this on the side. Okay, that belongs on the resume. That's
Absolutely.
that work is important. Or I had this opportunity, took this time to be volunteering in my community, volunteering within the school system, organizing homeschool collaboratives in my neighborhood during this time. Oh my gosh, like the work that you were doing during that time, was it paid work? No. Does it belong on the resume? Absolutely. So I think that really helps people to reframe that experience that they've had and build confidence too and what they're bringing back into the paid workforce. So that's one piece of it. You don't have a gap on your resume. And then the second piece of it is
I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna stop you right here for 1 second because
okay,
I
yeah, yeah.
definitely want to get to the second point. But I just want to put a pause here. How powerful is it that all of that is just a thought? It's
Mm-hmm.
a reframing of that thought that quote unquote gap that you have really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
How powerful is that to give to somebody?
I think so
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
I think so too.
absolutely.
It,
So
it
what
really,
else?
it completely changes the game for people when they're like sit there with it and be like, oh, like
Yeah,
people have told me, like society has told me have a gap. Well, I'm sitting here and telling you that you don't. So let's take a look at this together. And the second part is as you're thinking about re-entering the paid workforce, think about it as to what do you really want? Because that is going to, instead of approaching the job search from a place of, oh, I could do anything, I could be comfortable wherever, I just want to get back in. We're going to take the just out of this. People just all over the place. No, you want to get back in, and in what capacity? What kind of problems do you solve? What skills do you have? How do you want to use those skills? What company is going to be really lucky to have you? When we can reframe it into a targeted search and a confidence boost, you're going to do so much better in your interviews. You're going to talk about yourself on paper and in person with more confidence. No one's going to hire someone who walks in and be like, oh, I don't know if I would be good at this, but maybe take a chance on me. No, no, they're trying to solve a problem at their company. So show them how you solve problems and make sure that you are targeting the right problem to solve.
absolutely. If we can just change the conversation to here's how I can help you solve this particular problem based on my talent and expertise, we have a whole different level of a conversation.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You have a goal, and that goal is to help 1,000 parents land fulfilling jobs that they love without giving up the flexibility they need.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about how you're doing that.
Yeah. Uh, so I love this work. If you can't tell from how excited I get about talking about this, I love this work. And when I wake up to an email from someone saying, "Oh my gosh, Becca, like I landed this new role, I found this new opportunity, someone reached out to me and it's the perfect fit. This is working not only for my own professional satisfaction, I'm feeling happier in my work, but also I can get my kids off the bus or I can go to soccer practice afterwards and not feel stressed out. That just changes your whole life. So if I can be a part of that and help people, give people the tools and the strategies and the frameworks and the support to get there, and that's the impact that I can leave in the world. I'm going to get a little choked up here. If that's the impact that I can leave in the world, that's amazing. So how I am doing that, I do one-to-one coaching, but I also do group coaching, and that has really allowed me the opportunity to expand my reach and give more people access to these tools and strategies and frameworks and resources that are going to help them get to that goal, while also building a community of parents who can support each other. And I think it's really beautiful, and I love being able to create that for people.
Well, and that's why you connect specifically with those mid-career parents in the way that you do, because you are so passionate and, more importantly, committed and invested in the work that you get to do day in and day out. I am so glad you and I have had an opportunity to have this conversation. And shockingly enough, it is time for us to start wrapping up a little bit here. I know we're almost at time. So, the one question I always ask my guests is, what advice would you give for someone to help them build their mid-career GPS?
Mm-hmm. It's something that we've talked about a little bit, John, about nothing is permanent, and our lives change, our interests change, our circumstances change, the economy changes. There's so much happening around us. So any decision that you make in your mid-career, you're not locking yourself in for life. You're taking on a new experience that is going to build into this portfolio of experience that you have. And whether that ends up being the path that you stay on for the rest of your career, or it ends up being a chapter in your career that can lead you somewhere else, both are equally great answers. And that's something I really want to stress for folks, is that build the foundation, get the tools and the frameworks that are going to help you to identify what it is you want and need from this next chapter of your career. But then know that the next step doesn't have to be permanent. It can be a next chapter.
Wonderful advice. Becca, I want to thank you for spending some time with me today. And for everybody who has listened, I want to turn the mic over to you right now to share where people can connect with you, talk about your books, and anything else you want to share at this point. The mic's yours.
Thank you so much. Well, I would love to continue this conversation with folks. My website is beccacarnahan.com, just my name.com. Come find me there. That's also where you'll find my free training, how to land a fulfilling job you love without giving up the flexibility that you need. Totally free. Hop on there and let's have a chat through that training about how you can get where you want to go. Other places folks can find me on LinkedIn. Becca Carnahan. If you just pop my name in there, you can find me there. I'm always sharing content on LinkedIn and some of the funny stuff over on Instagram too. I like to have some fun with this, both on LinkedIn and on Instagram. The Instagram handle is with_love_Becca. So hope to see you there, whether it's on Instagram, LinkedIn, or on my website, which is beccacarnahan.com.
Becca, I will make sure that all of that is in the show notes for the listeners. But once again, thank you so much for spending some time with us today on the Mid-Career GPS podcast and helping me push this conversation about the mid-career journey and how people can have a much more fulfilling career and life simply because of where they're at this stage. So thank you.
Thank you, John, for all that you do. I love this topic. It's so important, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing and sharing this with the world.
Well, thank you, Becca. And once again, my friends, just a reminder, we build our mid-career GPSs 1 mile and 1 step at a time, and how you show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you usually listen. And I'd appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review. Visit johnneral.com to download your free copy of the 55-minute career transition jumpstart to help you start building your mid-career GPS. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Neral Coaching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.